In this video, we're diving into one of the most explosive drug cases in UK history. A gang boss who filmed himself surrounded by stacks of cash, only to end up on a gangland hit list. This is the story of Jamie Oldroyd, a flashy car dealer from Warrington who built a nationwide cocaine empire funded by kilos of Class A, celebrity endorsements, and a fake business front. But it all came crashing down after a £20 million coke haul was seized on the M6, the biggest land-based seizure in British history. That loss triggered a violent chain of events: arson attacks, shootings, and betrayal deep inside the criminal underworld. You'll hear about the Tobin brothers, multi-kilo suppliers who posed as ordinary family men while using a former UFC fighter as their enforcer. You'll see how encrypted phones, convoy runs from Kent, and bags full of cash led to one of the most sophisticated gang takedowns ever seen, and how it ended with Osman warnings, broken families, and 120 years in prison time handed down. Stay tuned, because this isn't just a story about drugs. It's about power, greed, paranoia, and what happens when you climb too high in the UK underworld. Jamie Oldroyd grew up on the housing estates of Birchwood in Warrington. Even as a teenager, he was known locally for his brash attitude and notoriety on the streets. In 2008, at just 18 years old, Oldroyd was jailed for shooting a young girl in the leg with a paintball gun, what he later claimed was for a laugh. The incident landed him a 1-year prison sentence and marked the start of a criminal record that would escalate over the years. By 2015, he was back behind bars, this time for dealing cannabis alongside his younger brother, William Wright. The conviction again brought him to the attention of police in Cheshire. After his release, delayed due to being caught with a mobile phone hidden in a prison toilet U-bend, Oldroyd set up a business, Pro-Lease Vehicle Hire, based on Common Lane in Culcheth. The company specialized in high-performance and luxury vehicles, cars like Audis, Jags, and Mercedes. Despite having no clear source of legitimate income, Oldroyd flaunted wealth and success. He built a flashy image around the company and gained celebrity endorsements from TV personalities, including Sam Thompson from Made in Chelsea, Miles Barnett from The Only Way is Essex, and Love Island's Frankie Foster. Each promoted Oldroyd's services on social media after sourcing vehicles through Pro-Lease. But underneath the luxury branding was growing suspicion. Oldroyd's behavior on the streets, the cars, the cash, the arrogance, began to attract unwanted attention. Community tip-offs started to filter in. Neighbors questioned how a man in his 20s could afford a fleet of expensive vehicles and maintain such a high-profile lifestyle. Unbeknownst to him, police were already taking notice, and it wouldn't be long before Oldroyd's name would move from the local rumor mill to the center of a national investigation. As police quietly built their case, Jamie Oldroyd made no effort to stay low. He flaunted his wealth on the streets of Warrington, not through social media posts, but through raw, visible excess. That included driving high-end vehicles, flashing stacks of cash, and making sure everyone saw it. One of the most damning pieces of evidence came from a video found on Islam Grana's mobile phone. In it, Oldroyd, Grana, and Towlant Paja are seen sitting around a table in a house on Killingworth Drive. On the table, £150,000 in cash, bundles of notes stacked high, so much that money-counting machines were needed to total it up. This was the real face of Oldroyd's operation: cocaine money laundered through fear, fast cars, and a fake business. Oldroyd's fleet included high-end Mercedes and BMWs, but also more unusual rides. One standout, a £30,000 dune buggy, which he drove like a toy. That buggy led to one of his most reckless moments. While driving it near a primary school, Oldroyd rammed a member of the public on the pavement, an incident serious enough to earn him a conviction for dangerous driving. Behind the scenes, his leasing company was losing money. His flashy lifestyle wasn't backed by business success. It was funded by cocaine, and the cracks were starting to show. As the investigation continued, detectives uncovered the scale of Oldroyd's wider network. A group of trusted associates operating safe houses, handling logistics, and keeping the cocaine supply flowing. One key player was Lewis Johnson, just 21 years old. He ran a gang safe house from a house on Liverpool Road in Sankey Bridges. From there, drugs were stored, packaged, and moved across the region. The supply chain stretched through multiple layers. Among the names identified were Islam Grana, Taulant Paja, and Paul Ferraiolo, each playing a role in the movement or sourcing of cocaine. In April 2018, police watched as Paul Ferraiolo, a man with close ties to Merseyside crime groups, handed over 1 kilogram of cocaine to Grana in the car park of the Tavern pub in Widnes. Grana was acting on instructions from Taulant Paja, the owner of the car wash in Birchwood where he worked. After the deal, Grana began transporting the drugs towards Middlesbrough, but never made it. He was arrested in Halifax with the kilo of cocaine hidden in a sports bag beneath the passenger seat. Police seized his phone, which contained the video of him, Oldroyd, and Paja counting £150,000 in cash. Another safe house was linked to the group, this one on Biggin Court in Padgate. In July 2018, it was raided by police. Inside, officers found over £125,000 worth of cocaine, alongside drug paraphernalia and packaging equipment. The network was expanding, and Oldroyd's crew had access to major supply. But now, police weren't just watching. They were beginning to strike. It's the early hours of the morning. Two vehicles, a Volkswagen transporter van and a Nissan Qashqai, head north on the M6 motorway. Inside the van is a hidden payload, 186 kilograms of high-purity coke imported through the English Channel and freshly collected from Rochester, Kent. 4 gang members are involved: Jamie Simpson, Claire Smith, Andrew Daniels, and Dean Brettle. Their job: get the shipment safely to Warrington, where it will be distributed and turned into massive street profits. But they're being watched. As they approach Junction 19 near Knutsford, Cheshire police move in. Unmarked cars flank the convoy. The motorway is shut down. The van is boxed in from all sides. A police helicopter hovers overhead, recording every move. Officers draw weapons. A man in a white t-shirt is dragged from the van and pinned to the tarmac. There's no escape. When they open the vehicle, they find hidden compartments beneath the floor, packed tight with cocaine. Street value, 20 million. This wasn't just a drug bust. It was the biggest land-based cocaine seizure in UK history. The bust was the direct result of intelligence gathered under Operation Dreadnought, and the final link that confirmed Jamie Oldroyd's gang was operating on a national scale. Though Oldroyd wasn't in the van, he was linked to Jamie Simpson, who was arrested during the stop. Police described Simpson as a friend and associate of Oldroyd, and both men were part of a wider criminal network investigated under Operation Dreadnought. The bust had devastating consequences. The seizure wiped out an enormous shipment, devastated the gang's finances, and sent shockwaves through the supply chain, from runners on the street all the way to suppliers in Merseyside and beyond. The M6 cocaine bust didn't just destroy a single deal. It collapsed the finances of multiple organized crime groups overnight. Meanwhile, Jamie Oldroyd had suffered millions in losses. Sources suggest the debt was so severe, his name landed on a gangland hit list. The fallout was immediate and violent. Businesses linked to Oldroyd and his family were targeted in a series of attacks. In July 2019, the windows of Designs All Mine, a bridal shop on Common Lane, owned by Oldroyd's mother, was smashed by two masked men. The shop had previously been opened by model Katie Price. A month later, gunshots were fired at his parents' home on Dowford Close in Colchester. Then in November, another family-run business, Dutch Lux, a sweet shop on Padgate Lane owned by his brother William Wright, was petrol-bombed in an arson attack. And it didn't stop there. A compound where Oldroyd stored his fleet of cars was broken into. The vehicles were trashed, and the message was clear. This wasn't police pressure. This was gangland retribution. The situation became so dangerous that detectives working the case were forced to issue Osman letters to Oldroyd and his family. These are formal warnings that there is credible intelligence of a real threat to life. Reports suggest that Oldroyd believed the campaign against him was coming from Merseyside, that he privately blamed Paul Ferraiolo, a known associate with links to major criminal figures in the area. The pressure was now closing in from all sides, financial, legal, and violent, and the man who once filmed himself surrounded by cash was now struggling just to stay alive. The £20 million seizure on the M6 had sent shockwaves through the wider drug network in the northwest. At the centre of the fallout were Alan and John Tobin, two of the region's biggest cocaine suppliers. Operating quietly out of Widnes and Prescott, the Tobins ran a nationwide distribution network, shifting vast amounts of Class A drugs to gangs across the UK. They dealt in cocaine, heroin, ketamine, and cannabis, using specially adapted vehicles with hidden compartments. To the outside world, they appeared clean. Alan Tobin even worked as a mental health nurse. But behind closed doors, they were moving kilos through encrypted networks and using couriers on weekly runs. On EncroChat, Alan used the handle Cape Rocket, and John was known as Slight Drake. The cocaine shipment seized on the M6 had been arranged by the Tobins, and the loss hit them hard. They were left with massive debts and under pressure from figures higher up the chain. As threats mounted, things turned violent. In early 2020, John Tobin was shot outside his home in Prescott. He survived, but the shooting was part of an escalating series of intimidation tactics. Court records later revealed the brothers were so desperate, they started selling personal belongings to raise money. They were also feeding intelligence to other criminals, including one underworld figure from Manchester, in a bid to protect themselves or gain favour. The Tobins didn't just supply drugs. In the wake of the M6 loss, they became active players in a broader criminal power struggle, one that would soon explode into full-blown violence on the streets of Warrington. By early 2020, the fallout from the M6 cocaine bust had moved far beyond debt and paranoia. Now, it was about survival. The Tobin brothers, under serious pressure from major suppliers, turned to information as currency. Through EncroChat, the Tobins made contact with a Manchester-based gang figure who was actively planning violent attacks on rivals. His focus, Liam Byrne Jr. and Liam Byrne Sr., figures linked to the notorious Byrne Cullen drug network. The Manchester man sent a message saying, "I'm going to deal with them soon. Liam Byrne. Still trying to get their address. Get me the details. I'll sort this out. There's two Byrnes, father and son." Alan Tobin's reply revealed his growing despair. "Same here, mate. I'm under serious pressure. Nothing's coming in, and everyone's chasing me for money. If Liam's still active, I'll get their addresses and send them over. I've met them both." Alan followed through, sending the Manchester man images of Liam Jr. and Sr. He sent their home addresses, satellite images of their properties, and their car registration details. To get these, Alan turned to an associate known as Rob, who used the EncroChat handle NovaBear, a name connected to former UFC fighter Robbie Broughton. There's no evidence Broughton knew how the info would be used, and he was never charged. Alan later asked John if Rob had provided Liam Byrne Jr.'s address. John confirmed he had, and said he'd already passed it on to the Manchester contact. John also agreed to join Alan on a reconnaissance trip. While John never indicated he knew about a planned attack, the groundwork was clearly laid. By April 24, 2020, the planned hits are already in motion. Night falls on a quiet street, Poplars Avenue in Warrington. A man in a pizza delivery jacket walks up to a semi-detached house. He rings the bell. David Barnes answers the door. He isn't involved in the drug world. He's the stepfather of Liam Byrne Jr. Without warning, 4 shots are fired. One bullet tears through his lower leg, shattering the bone. The gunman, later identified as Aaron Bretherton, runs to a waiting transit van driven by Anthony Morris, with Lewis Fitzpatrick inside. As they flee, Morris searches for news of the hit, Googling the words, "shooting in Warrington." David Barnes survives the shooting, but not without lasting damage. He suffers a stroke, severe anxiety, and life-altering injuries. The intended target was his stepson. Barnes was an innocent man, caught in the crossfire of a criminal feud. That same night, a second attacker, also disguised as a pizza delivery driver, knocks on the door of a house on Sinclair Avenue, a property linked to Charlie Cullen, father of Leon and Anthony Cullen. But Charlie doesn't currently live there. The tenants explain, and the gunman walks away. The message was clear. It was a coordinated effort, driven by gangland politics and fueled by insider information. After the Poplars Avenue shooting, the Manchester man sends Alan a screenshot of the news story and warns, "Keep your head down." Alan replies, "Let's keep this between us." Soon after, the conversation shifts. The Manchester man asks about another target, someone the Tobins held responsible for their financial downfall. What jail is Alvin in? Alvin was the nickname used for Jamie Oldroyd, said to resemble a chipmunk. Alan checks with John and replies, "He's the reason we're in this mess. If anything happens to him, I won't forget it. I owe you for that." The Manchester man responds, "I'll take his eyes. I'll deal with his mum too." Oldroyd, once filmed sitting beside piles of cash, was now on a gangland hit list. In court, it was revealed that he owed Alan Tobin £1.5 million, money that vanished along with the cocaine on the M6. By offering up details on both the Byrnes and Oldroyd, the Tobins had crossed a line. They weren't just suppliers anymore. They were now players in a violent underworld chess game, trading names and locations in return for protection or revenge. The shootings in Warrington were a turning point. What followed was the systematic collapse of multiple organized crime groups, triggered by encrypted phone evidence, surveillance, and coordinated raids. The first to fall were the men directly involved in the shooting of David Barnes. In May 2020, police arrested Aaron Bretherton, the gunman. They also raided Anthony Morris, the getaway driver, and Lewis Fitzpatrick, who helped facilitate the weapon handover. At Bretherton's flat on Netherfield Road South in Everton, police recovered a Glock 9mm pistol, 8 live rounds, a magazine, £5,000 in cash, and a smoke grenade. More ammunition and traces of gunpowder were found hidden inside the kitchen extractor fan and a bathroom vent. Meanwhile, at Fitzpatrick's address in Norris Green, another £4,000 in cash was seized. Though the Glock wasn't the same firearm used in the shooting, EncroChat messages showed that just days earlier, the group had arranged for a second handgun, believed to be the one used to shoot Barnes, to be collected from the Croxteth area, hidden in a shed and soaked in petrol to avoid detection. Bretherton later received a 22-year prison sentence, with a 5-year extended license, for conspiracy to inflict grievous bodily harm. While the Tobin brothers were facing justice, Jamie Oldroyd's own empire was also falling apart. One raid, one arrest, one piece of evidence at a time. Although he hadn't been caught physically transporting drugs, Operation Dreadnought built a solid case around Oldroyd using surveillance, phone data, and crucially, forensic evidence. Traces of Oldroyd's DNA were found on cocaine with a street value of over £125,000. He had also been observed coordinating logistics, moving between safe houses, and regularly switching between 17 different high-performance vehicles, all registered under various names or tied to his car leasing front, Pro-Lease Vehicle Hire. The investigation showed that Oldroyd was directing a national-scale drug operation and had close links with key players, including Jamie Simpson, who was caught in the £20 million M6 convoy. In court, he was found guilty of conspiracy to supply cocaine and sentenced to 14 years and 3 months in prison. But Oldroyd wasn't alone. His operation included a tightly organized network of runners, drivers, stash house managers, and fixers. Over time, 21 gang members were rounded up and sentenced. Here's how the rest of the sentences broke down. Four others are awaiting sentencing. Collectively, the group received over 120 years in prison. Police also seized a large number of assets linked to Oldroyd's criminal income. High-end cars from his leasing firm, expensive watches, designer clothing and trainers, and over £150,000 in physical cash, captured in footage found on gang members' phones. This is what the end looks like. What started with a car lease business in Warrington ended with firebombed shops, shootings in the street, and over 120 years of prison time. Jamie Oldroyd built his empire on cash, cars, and kilos, flashy enough to look untouchable. But one wrong move, one £20 million bust on the M6, shattered everything. From luxury Range Rovers and Instagram endorsements to being hunted down. His name whispered on EncroChat, his family under threat, and his empire destroyed from the inside. The Tobin brothers ran their business like professionals, encrypted phones, adapted vehicles, shell companies. But when the product disappeared, so did the loyalty. They fed names to underworld figures, signed off on violence, and fell with the same force they once rose. Even those who weren't meant to be part of this world, people like David Barnes, shot on his own doorstep, paid the price. Because this is how it works in the UK underworld. It always comes back. Whether you're the one driving the van, stacking the cash, or filming yourself in a room full of money, when it collapses hard, and no one walks away clean. For more raw and real crime stories, hit the like button and subscribe. Until the next episode, stay alert and stay safe.